start with Gesche Joost to my left. So while you walk up to the stand, please take the floor. I will tell the audience that Gesche is a professor for design research at the University of the Arts in Berlin. She is also heading the Design Research Lab. Beyond that, she's also Germany's digital champion, bringing her knowledge of design and inclusion to the digital world. And her passions are to keep humans human, to fight fears, and to include all of society's talents as we go digital. And this is going to be key messages in her presentation. So please, the floor is yours.
I can, Sometimes you just have to take action and then everything, falls into place. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I will talk a little bit about data and about innovation. And I have to admit that there was a point in time where my presentation was shown on screen, but maybe it will come. There was a point in time when I thought that data is something that's quite boring and that is quite abstract. And this really changed. This changed dramatically. And that is good news in a way. But on the other hand side, data is something that still many people think is something very abstract and doesn't have to do much with my personal life. But maybe since Edward Snowden was revealing what is happening with our data or what might happen with our data, in Germany there's a huge discussion and a very critical discussion about data. So there's a lot of conflict potential and insecurity about is data something to drive innovation or is data something that harms my personal life, my private sphere. And that's why data-driven innovation is a topic that's quite interesting. But definitely I need some slides because I'm a designer, and designers without slides is something that's not working. They're working on it. Yeah, I think so. Yay, technology. So my motivation of my talk is, I think that open government and open data are some of the key topics that drive us here. And they, of course, they enable new forms of collaboration between government and citizens. So what's the kind of new relationship between government and citizens based on the principles of open government and of open data?
F11. Just to check also to another PC.
Oh, magic, huh? So once again.
Magic.
Second, so both become co-designers for public services and citizenship. And this is something that's really new for me also, and I love this vision that, citizens and public services and public administration are co-designers. So they are kind of the same level and have a dialogue and co-work on stuff that, shapes our urban living, our everyday life. And open government, of course, makes its decisions and processes open, leading to more acceptance amongst European citizens. Because maybe this is also a very European topic that you might more refer to the European Union as also a community of values, of communality, of everyday life engagement and practice through open government and open data processes. So this is the motivation, and I hope to convince you with some arguments that I will deliver in my speech. Yeah, data is something complicated in the minds of many people. So, big data is the new evil. So the feuilleton in the German newspaper writes about this is the new really bad thing, and nobody really knows what is big data. So we have to make very, very clear and to define very clearly, what's the difference between personal data, what is the potential and also maybe the ethical limitations of big data, and what is the good of open data, and what kind of common vision do we have when we speak about open data. So we need a clear structure and clear data policy. Open data, we all know it, is data that can be freely used, reused and redistributed by anyone. It's non-personal data. It's data collected by governments, but also by research institutions or by companies. So we also know about the benefits of open data. We can improve government accountability. We hope to increase the efficiency of government, so there are studies and numbers that say that this might be the case if we really have a good implementation of open data processes. We can contribute to economic growth, for example, for little startups using open data. And of course, we can improve the quality and variety of tools and services. And I will show some examples for this. So this is kind of the facts that we all know, the starting point. But what do we need for a successful open data policy? So it depends on 4 points at least. So commitment and skilled people. We are all here in the room, I guess. Supportive legal framework. So this is something that we can address. Availability of data and conditions for reuse. So starting with the first point, there's a quite nice quote, I think, from Tim Berners-Lee. He says, it has to start at the top, in the middle, and at the bottom. So, go all the way through. So top-down, top-level political commitment. We heard it today by Commissioner Oettinger. He started his speech with focusing on open data, and of course, this is a very good point. The middle out, as we are here, an engaged and well-resourced middle layer of skilled government bureaucrats and people. So that's all we are here in the room. And bottom up, the civil society, and in particular a small but motivated group of civic hackers. And maybe this is something new also to us here in the room, to really engage with so-called hackers or civic tech people, civic tech engineers who are out there, who work bottom up, who are not very organized often, but sometimes are really organized in NGOs, and I will show some examples. The legal framework, of course, we're working on it, and this is something important. So we need, of course, a coherent open data policy and a strong implementation, for example, in those 2 points. So the PSI directive, public sector information with right to reuse, of course, this is something, a requirement. And the FOI legislation, so the freedom of information, needs to be set up. And the international data license, of course, there are some institutions working on national data licenses. Maybe that's not such a good idea in a connected Europe and in a connected world. Of course, we need international data licenses. What about the availability of data? We need portals. That's quite simple. National and European portals, thematic portals, federal states portals, civil portals. So, a lot of different sources where we can just access different kinds of data, and maybe in a structured and in a structured way and topic-wise, maybe, geodata, environmental data, so that really people who want to use the data for their services can access them right away. There are in Germany, some national portals. I just had some screenshots here. So the GovData portal, the Geodata portal, and the Transparency portal Hamburg. So, we're somehow on the way in Germany. Might be great, but if we compare it, and that's with reference to in this morning's talk by Mike, of course, United Kingdom is very good. They have very good performance in terms of open data policy and portals, and Germany is on level 17. So maybe we are not there yet, and throughout the whole Europe, of course, this kind of very heterogeneous pattern now here, so we should strive for a kind of common approach. And what are the conditions for reuse currently? So key data sets are not available or in poor quality sometimes. That's, of course, the main issue, a main barrier. The pricing, PSI beyond marginal costs, so it's really not affordable, so you cannot really easily use it. And we have high transactions costs. If you talk to a software engineer and he speaks about his everyday practice copying data sets out of a PDF file, that's really cumbersome. So we need discoverability, accessibility, and interoperability. So now to the practical part. What do we do if we have this dream of open data portals and everything is fixed? Code for Germany is a very nice and wonderful initiative that just started this year, and they are the little sister, let's say, of Code for America. And what they do is they sit together, so some software engineers, male and female, and they sit together with public administration people in different cities in Germany and just do coding, and they code public services. And this is how it looks like, so really, easy and hands-on with nice coffee and rolls. And what they do, for example, is wonderful services. They are called OK Labs, so this is the OK Lab Berlin. there was a huge discussion about how we reuse the Tempelhofer field. This is the former airport. You know, in Berlin we have some issues with airports, and we have some old airports and some new airports, some in-between airports. And this is an old one, an unused field, a big one in the city center. And there was a public poll about what should be the future plan for this Tempelhofer field. And they made a 3D visualization, a very beautiful one, where you could compare the different visions for the future of the Tempelhofer field. So should it be office buildings, should it be a whole green park, should it be a kind of mixed usage? So very beautiful tool just to really come to a decision about, you know, what version you should prefer and how you should vote in the public poll. So very beautiful and very practical tool. Or another one that's called Spielplatzwüstenkartieren, wonderful, from the OK Labs in Hamburg. So this is about the empty spots for playgrounds for kids in the city. So where are kind of deserted fields where there's no playground for kids. So this is also kind of a political instrument. Just by doing this mapping, you see, you know, where are playgrounds and where are no ones. And this doesn't look so fancy, but it's indeed really fancy. It's OK Labs Ulm. They did a kindergarten map of Ulm, and at least in Germany it's very cumbersome to find a kindergarten place for your little kid, and you have to call them all up, so you have to ring all the different kitas, and yeah, parents get really annoyed by this. And if you have such a simple kind of mapping tool where you see where there are empty places and where you could try to sneak your little kid in, that's quite helpful. And sometimes, you know, normal people wonder, why isn't there a public service like this? Yeah, just because there are just limited resources, and yeah, maybe it's really easy. There is such a need by parents, so this map was made by engaged parents. There's such a need that they do it on their own. If they just have got the data, they sit down for 1 weekend and do the programming for it. And now it is available for everybody. So wonderful examples of, you know, new public services and new dialogues and engagements between the two. So Code for Germany, they have weekly or bi-weekly code sprints in their OK Labs. They have more than 250 members. 5,000 hours of volunteer coding since February. So this is really amazing how engaged those young people are. And they have already 50 apps developed, and with practical no funding. So they tried to get some funding by the local governments, but that was not so easy. So they started, I don't care, I just go for it, and I just do it. I just do the coding. And so that's really a good example, I think, for maybe it could be implemented on different levels, maybe on the European level, just as an idea of something that worked out quite well and was very, you know, low barriers, just very practically, very quick. They had quick results and very hands-on tools that came out. So from this point of view, open data requirements that can derive from this, so make, of course, data technically and legally open, but promote their reuse, like for hack days, for civic tech competitions, as we saw the examples. Educate people in data literacy. I think this is more addressed on the European level. In Germany, this is not really addressed. So this should be something, not just programming skills, but also data literacy. How can you practice and design with your own data? How can you make the right decisions on, you know, how you want to network with your data or what you want to have in your private sphere? So really educate data literacy. And of course, train staff from public sector and develop open data processes and infrastructures, because I think that the everyday life experience is that people would like to share their data or open up data, but they don't know how to do it. Maybe there are technical requirements, and maybe you've got all this stuff as PDF file on your laptop, but you don't know, you know, what is the right format, what's the right model for reusing it, what are privacy issues. So there should be a defined process that is really easy. And then stimulate those kind of fellowships and open data incubators. This should be something really wonderful. You know, imagine an open data incubator with those guys from the picture, and then you kind of co-design new ideas on open data. It could start with a weekend, and it could be, you know, if it's successful, it could be a role model. And as another issue, and that comes also more from my research background as a designer and design researcher, what are also new forms of community empowerment and dialogue? So the open data community is one of the forms, but we also, with my research team at the University of the Arts, we also explored different tools and asked ourselves, what tools do you need to come to an understanding of the community and to engage in dialogue? And of course, there are many digital tools. You all know some of them. There are some new ones. Brabbel is one as a discussion forum, for example. And there are different tools that are good and successful, but only for the digital elite. So just for those who are engaged anyways, and then use those tools too. But we thought, what do you do in local neighborhoods? And some of my research, so my PhD candidates, they just, went to their neighbors in the middle of Berlin, Fischerinsel it's called, and there was a seniors computer club. And they kind of engaged in the digital world. They said, we want to explore the internet. And then they came together. They had between 65 and 85. And then they just, formed their kind of community to explore the digital world. And then my students came to them and started, what is your community like? And what is your space? What is your neighborhood? And then they made this little mapping exercise. So they kind of made individual mapping of their location, of their physical space, and came up with a kind of mapping where they said, what are negative areas, what are positive areas, what are areas of community where we meet, and where's potential for action. So is this a kind of common ground in both meanings where we could start kind of political engagement and action? And this is what they actually did. So they came up with little initiatives to design and define their community and their neighborhood. And they came to one issue, because some of them are not very rich, and they can use the computer in the seniors computer club, but at home they don't have a computer. So they said, well, we don't have access. So how can we share our ideas and share also our ideas with the digital community if we don't have a computer at home? And then my students came up with a nice idea of a hybrid letterbox. And this is the first prototype. So it's called Network Neighborhood. And they made just a physical letterbox, and you can have different postcards, for example, with a question, what I would like to change in my neighborhood. And then they were standing in this neighborhood and asked people to fill out those cards. For example, I would like to build a wood workshop in my neighborhood. And then you just take this physical artifact, put it in the letterbox, and then it is magically appearing in the internet. And that's quite easy. This is really a hack. So this is a hardware hack. It is just a little camera that takes a picture and posts it on an online forum, and you can scroll through the different posts, and you can comment on the posts on the digital blog. And there's another version, you can print out the comments also. So it's a kind of really back and forth, and it's called the hybrid letterbox because it's the interface between the analog and the digital. And in another stage of the project, they took this letterbox and projected the results on this building. So this was in Berlin Neukölln. So this is also a bit a rough neighborhood. And they asked, dear Sonnenallee, that's a street there, you would be perfect if. And then people were commenting on those little cards, and this was projected on this wall. And you could also write your comments via Twitter. So you could send a Twitter message and an SMS. These comments were posted also on that thing. And we can check so that this is the blog. So I wish you would be a bit more friendly to bicycles, you wouldn't smell so badly, you would be perfect if there would be meeting points, and so on and so on. And here you read the comments on this. You are sex and crime. So it's really nice tool just to engage with the community and have it as a public event. And that was really easy. This letterbox is. There's nearly no cost. It's an open source work plan that we were building, and it's a really engaging tool to address people who are maybe not that engaged in the first place. What they did too is they moved to that neighborhood because they wanted to come out of the university, out of their common setting, and then they spent 4 weeks in a so-called living lab in Berlin there. And there was just an abandoned shop, and they moved there and engaged with the neighborhoods in dialogues. And they created different tools and concepts. How could they change their neighborhood, and what's their relationship, what's their action plan that they could provide. And they came also up with another beautiful tool that's called the derouting app. And this is something that we explored together with the students. So you have this app on your smartphone, and you are routed through the city, and the aim is that you get lost. So in your neighborhood, you should really get lost. So not just, walk the common path, but really, take a left, take a right, and then where are we now? And then take pictures, and then try to rediscover your own kind of neighborhood. And then one task was make 5 pictures that are relevant to social life in this space. And then you can comment on that, or take a photograph of spatial features that promote or hinder social interaction. And then there were different tasks also to do some video recording or some audio recording. So really have it as an exploratory tool to characterize the space that you are living in. And this is now mapped to a common map of the neighborhood. And then you have already a kind of individual approach to your location, to your community, and have first starting points for action. Because you see, this space is not very friendly. It's everybody voted it's negative. So what could we change? Maybe it's just a little change that we could do, or maybe it's something that we should do together with the public administration. Maybe we can address this issue together. So a really easy, hands-on, basic tools here developed by students. And this can change dramatically the kind of common sense in a community. So I like these kind of really nice, handy tools. So the challenges in developing those tools and in using them is engage with the local communities, find new formats to address not only the digital elite, but think about the diversity of people and how to have different channels of engagement, different media also, handwriting, video recording, interviews, taking pictures or painting little pictures is all wonderful. It's all kind of a rich input that you should collect. Give access to diverse people, for elderly families, people with disabilities, non-tech people. So if you ask, what's the future of technology, people go like, whoa, I don't know. But maybe, if you find other questions and other ways to address these topics, maybe that's good, then it is worth listening to them. And find formats to bridge the digital divide. So local, global is one question. So, as a European Commission, this is really abstract, but maybe how do we locate it? So how do we connect it to local circumstances, and how do we feel or perceive the European Commission and the European Union in my neighborhood? That's a nice question. And also, of course, between analog and digital. So don't make a gap there, but really try to build bridges. Data for participation is a big vision that I think we all share here. So we need, the Data Pop Alliance called it a people-centered big data revolution. So very nice terms. So also in terms of empowerment, we have to develop an ethical use of big data and the empowerment for civic use. So not having data as something very abstract, but really kind of a personal approach and the empowerment to use data in a good way. And the definition, of course, and the barriers, what is my personal data and what belongs to me as a user and as a citizen. So is there a right for accessing public data, and in what kind of format can I access it and how can I use it? What data is of public and social relevance? That's a very interesting question. So really define what's there, what are the different data types, and what's the usage, and maybe explore it through practicing it, not just on a theoretical level, but really hands-on. And this democratic vision gives access to public data, promote co-creation and civic services. So the vision, in a nutshell, for digital society, the use of data is, of course, a key driver, not only for economic growth, but also for social participation. And we need a policy on the future use of data to secure consumer rights, support open data, stimulate sustainable growth and innovation. Thank you very much for listening.